Lewis in the Black Horse Pub. Now we're going to do this to get rid of that one. It is Monday indeed.
Good morning, Keith.
Good morning, and there we are.
I'm sorry I didn't see you yesterday. I had in fact, what was a rather pleasant family.
You're live,
surprise.
by the way.
Sorry?
You're live.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, I had a pleasant family surprise that kept me away from taking a wander down the road.
Oh.
So that's
one
what
of the
happened.
family turned up, did they?
Yeah, and it was not in a bad way. And as I think Phil sometimes has this, adult children just turn up when they want to turn up, don't they, Phil?
They certainly do.
And they tend to fill the washing machine and empty the fridge, and then bugger off again to wherever
it should be the other way round, of course.
I know, of course, and I've said to them, I said, there will come a point in time when I will need my bottom wiped, and I didn't procreate to have 3 daughters who aren't willing to nurse me. I won't tell you what the answer was. Keith,
Ida's joined us.
Yeah, as you probably know, Keith, I may have told you this. Every Sunday since the start of lockdown, my family have had a Zoom on a Sunday evening meeting, principally because I've got elderly in-laws and their children, of whom my wife is one. They've got 4. The other 3 live a long way away. Just like to see them and check up on them, and and it's a chat, and how are the grandchildren and all that sort of thing. But since the start of lockdown, which is quite a long time ago now, and Phil will confirm this, I've done a little quiz every week for them, based sometimes on a subject, based sometimes on news. And I thought I might, on our Monday morning, and Phil knows the answers to all of these, of course he does. I'm not going to give you all the questions, Keith, but I'm going to ask you a couple of them, if that's okay. Are you all right with that?
Yeah, I probably don't know the answers, but still far away.
Okay. I'm going to find something that I think you will know. Last Thursday saw the 60th anniversary of the loss and the arrival of 2 characters. Who are those? And Phil knows this. Who are the 2 characters, Keith? This is good. This is good for your mental health, I promise you.
Yes, I'm sure it is.
So if you do the maths, 60 years ago,
it was.
I would imagine you were living in Vancouver at the time.
I would think that I was, and I remember reading about this and even reading it on the news. And I'm afraid I suffer from short-term memory. No, I would need some thinking time.
No, it was the assassination of JFK.
Ah, right.
And the birth of Benjamin Britten.
Sorry?
No, no, but that wasn't 60 years ago, Phil.
Oh, I see what you mean. Sorry, I don't.
So it's not just the same date; it's exactly the same day.
Yeah, all right, Richard. I've misunderstood.
That JFK was lost, and Doctor Who had his first broadcast.
Yes, I actually remember the day that JFK was, as most people do. But in fact, I was at university, and a naughty boy, I slept in. And I went and got on the bus that went along University Avenue, and somebody said, "This is dreadful, isn't it? This is dreadful." And I nodded very sagely and said, "Yes, it is," not knowing what the hell they were talking about.
You simply didn't know?
No. Simply didn't know. I scooted out of my bed to try and get to a 9:30 lecture. And the university was sort of 10 minutes away on a bus down the University Mall. And the people were talking in little clusters, and there was only one or two people on their own. And one of them said to me, "It's just dreadful, isn't it? It's just dreadful." I hadn't a clue what she was talking about. I found out soon enough when I got onto the. She told me that I got onto the campus, and of course they immediately closed the university down. Which means good students, despite the enormity of what happened, is we all then scooted down to the pub to watch everything on television.
Yes.
That's the flimsiest alibi I've ever heard.
The only things I can sort of equate to that, I remember being a student when we had the Great Storm, and I lived on the 4th floor of a house, right at the very top of it. And I slept through this storm, and I woke up, and it was a house on a square, Wellington Square in Oxford, and all these massive trees had fallen down. And I thought, what's been going on there then? And the other one I remember is being in Court 1 in Lewes, when a chap who became a very good friend of mine, who, despite being a journalist, I have to say, Keith, there are some who are okay. Mark, he was covering a case I was doing, and at sort of 4:15 we rose. Court ended for the day, and he came over and he said, "You've not heard, have you?" And I said, "No," because no internet or anything. He said the Twin Towers have been taken down, and that's how I learned of that. I don't know where were you, Phil, when you learned of the Twin Towers?
I honestly can't remember.
No.
I remember watching it either live or nearly live.
Yeah.
And those images are imprinted in my mind. But where I was, I know where I was in the Great Storm. I was in Jackie's flat. This is before we were married. In Belfast.
Dirty young man.
Sleeping on the sofa, slept through it.
I was at Lytham St Anne's, of all places. I've never been there before, or never since. But
what the hell were you doing in Lytham St Anne's?
I can't remember what company it was now, but I've been asked to brief their executives on meeting the press and that sort of thing. And my phone rang, and it was a very, very noted journalist called Ron Onions, who was head of Capital Radio News and then head of IRN News, ultimately. And he said, "I am not joking, Keith. Don't think that I'm joking." And then he told me. And because he had prefaced it, because we would tend to tease one another, senior journalists. The other thing is, I once met Tom Baker, I think it was, who was one of the Doctor Who's.
One of the two, oddly enough, the two people with the surname Baker who have played Doctor Who, the other one being Colin Baker, who was much less successful.
Lytham St Anne's is in Lancashire, and today is Lancashire Day.
No, I know where Lytham St Anne's is. I'm not. It's the posh bit of Blackpool, isn't it?
Did you know it was Lancashire Day today?
I get the feeling that you feel that every day is Lancashire Day.
On this date in 1295, Lancashire representatives went to the then Common Parliament under Edward I.
Oh, right. That's interesting. And I suppose that there's still that odd thing that, there's the Duchy of Lancashire, and then if people wish to cease to be
the Duchy of Lancaster, isn't it?
Lancaster, and if MPs wish to cease to be an MP,
yeah,
there's something Lancastrian about that, isn't there?
Yes, there is, but I can't quite put my finger on the specifics.
No. So, Keith, you've got one more question, which will segue. Do you know what? I ought to do this for a living, frankly. It will segue beautifully into what we're going to carry on talking about today.
What does segue?
What's segue?
I honestly don't know what the word segue means.
Right. Do you want me to buy you a dictionary for Christmas?
Go on, carry on.
There is a female history professor who works out of the University of Utah in America. And she has a modestly sized bottle of formaldehyde that she keeps on her desk. What does it contain? This is a great little fact.
Gin.
I'm not suggesting you're going to get it, but you're going to remember it, I promise you.
I suggested gin.
No, because it's formaldehyde.
There's something in it.
Yep.
Was she
It purports to be Napoleon's penis that they cut off at his post-mortem when he died. So it's quite a small bottle of formaldehyde. I just want to make it clear, chaps, that if I go before you, you'll need to be buying yourself an aquarium for my. I'm just saying, Phil.
Just saying, yeah.
but it is slightly controversial as to whether or not it is in fact Napoleon's little fella, because I don't think. Sorry,
an
go
American
ahead.
attorney would ask, "Are you sure Napoleon was dead when you did this?"
I don't know, because of course he did have this odd relationship with women. Joseph. I don't think we touched upon it last time.
Well, I tried to, but you shut me up.
Well, that's probably for the best. But she was older than him.
She'd been married before and had a son.
Yeah.
And the sad irony was that she didn't give Napoleon a son, which is why he divorced her.
Yeah. Albeit he had a number of siblings who he put into high office around Europe.
Including his stepson, yes. But
he
wanted a male heir, a bit like Henry VIII,
I think you need some male heir, but that's a different point. Sorry. Did you say heir or did you say hair? Sorry, I missed it.
Look, short arse.
That's
There's
the one.
Quite a bit of hair on this head. It's just very, very blonde.
Yeah, and I'm too short to see it. So next time I see you, I'll stand on a chair and pull your wig off. So that's fine.
Now you've got 3 daughters, Richard. What children have you got, Philip?
I have a daughter who's in her mid-30s, who always announces when she's turning up, which is lovely. She's currently out of work because of they're now settled, but the writers and actors strikes in the film industry in the States had a very bad knock-on effect over here. And her profession is a set decorator for film sets. So she's currently out of work.
Sorry, Phil, if I can just say, from all I've heard about the work that she's done, she's worked on some very large film productions, and she's very good at her work.
Yes, thank you for that. I agree with that. She's done two out of the 3 Paddingtons. She's done the recent one with Indiana Jones with Harrison Ford looking half his age, where they went to Glasgow and made Glasgow city centre look like New York. And she's done others that I probably should remember. Yeah, Boys in the Boat, about the American rowing age at the Munich Olympics in 36. Based on the book. Yeah, she's done loads. But she's just had a kick in the teeth. I've got to have a call from her later, because she's now unable to pay her rent, and she went for universal credit, and they've given her virtually nothing.
Yeah.
It's
the bank. It's the bank of mum and dad, isn't it?
Yes. Well, as you well know, Richard, that's not. There has to be a limit to that. I'm on state pension now. Anyway,
you're in a state and you're a pensioner, I think is what you mean.
Well, I'm certainly in a state.
Yeah.
Sorry, to answer Keith's kind question.
Yes, please do.
I then have 2 sons. I have Charlie, who's in his early 30s. He starts his new job today as a solicitor with Southwark Council. He never tells us when he's turning up. He's turned up twice in the last 10 days with no notice whatsoever. Emptied the fridge and buggered off again.
Yeah.
And then my youngest, who again always lets me know, is Oliver, who is 24 this December. He's the one who, as you know, has just got a first-class degree from the Guildhall. He is a teacher. He's picking up work more and more, and he does his own live music, and he gets paid for the like. So,
yeah,
Charlie and the boys are keeping their head above water.
Yes,
I hope.
Yes.
But Jess is she's in a bit of a pickle at the moment.
Not of her making, by the sounds of it.
Entirely not.
It's a
She
side.
submitted all the evidence. I mean, they've treated her. You know, she's not a complainer, Jess, but she just said they were just rubbish. They refused to accept even my lease that tells them how much rent I'm paying. That's not. She was told that's not enough evidence. But there we are. Enough of that. That's not what this podcast is about. But so they're my children, Keith.
Well, interesting families. I've just got one daughter, and I must say that I've never thought about the loss of not having a son. I've been perfectly happy and satisfied with her. But I wonder if I could take just a moment, because Philip has stirred a memory, talking about the actors' strike in Hollywood. Because the actors' strike in Hollywood caused me one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. Because the actors were on strike, they moved all the film production up to Vancouver, which actually had the best sound stage anywhere in North America.
Phil, if he starts talking porn, I'm going to close this down. I just want to make it clear, okay?
Well, because he may mention you and what you've done over the years.
No, sorry, Keith. You go ahead.
But all journalists that appeared on television in North America had to belong to ACTRA, the Association of Canadian Television Radio Artists. And so we were offered bit parts. And I was offered a bit part in Carnal Knowledge with Anne Margaret.
I told you, Phil, I told you.
You were right, Richard. Bye-bye, Keith. We've got to go now.
Yeah. It's
Well,
it's just an
the best part is
instinctive thing. He gets that twinkle in his eye, and you know it's something to do with his past.
I
So what was
rolled on a bit, and I found myself in Belfast, and a chap came to who was a producer, and we looked at one another and said, I know you, as you do. But we didn't pursue it too far in case we'd punch one another on the nose or something. And eventually, in conversation, he said, oh, I worked in Vancouver. I said, so did I. CBC, so did I. What I liked about Vancouver, he said, was we all got these bit parts in movies. And I said, yes. Which movie were you in? And he said, Carnal Knowledge. And it was a moment I could have that great line because I said, I didn't recognize you with your clothes on.
Is it possible? I think we can segue, Phil, away from our meant to be topic. We can do that later in the week because I'm interested to hear more of Keith's stories about this. If that's
well,
okay with you.
This one has a sad ending because I found myself in Maine, in Bangor, in Maine, and I was invited to meet some people, and people got talking stories, and they got around to the film industry, and I told this story, and they said, "Oh, that's very hilarious," and 24 hours later, they came back and said, "We're throwing a party for you, and we're getting the video of Carnal Knowledge so that we can all watch it." And I thought, "Oh my God!" And they got the video copy of Carnal Knowledge, and both this chap that I knew in Belfast and myself had gone onto the cutting room floor. We went in it.
So you were in Carnal Knowledge, and then you went to Bangor. Is that
is that one word or two, Phil? Yeah, I went to Bangor, but she refused. Yeah, quite.
Exactly. I fed you a line there, Richard.
You did, Keith. Is it possible for you on a live broadcast to give us a sanitized synopsis of the plot of that epic? I don't know which famous director it was who did it. That film, Carnal Knowledge. It's not part of the oeuvre that I'm particularly familiar with, but
to be quite honest with you, I've forgotten it, except that it had Anne Margaret and another famous actress in it, and they were naughty.
Yeah, I sort of somehow thought that might be the. Now, Keith, there are two things, okay? There's the plot of a film where you've got a bit part, and there's your real life. Now, which of these do you think this relates to when you were in Vancouver? I'm just asking, not in a bad way. You know.
Well, Carnal Knowledge was groundbreaking in as much as no director or producer had dared sort of show any part of the anatomy before. When was it made? It's got to be around 1960 or so, I suppose. At which time I was very young and very active, and so on and so forth. So
we don't want to go there. We don't want to go there.
No. Well, we didn't talk about it, and the film actually explained it for us. And all you had to say to somebody was, "Have you seen Carnal Knowledge?"
You've suggested that Carnal Knowledge was groundbreaking. I have to say that in my experience of such matters, I've never actually broken the ground. So I take my non-existent hat off to you, Keith, because you achieved something there that the rest of us didn't. It may well be that they thought you were just too much for the other actors in it, and that's why you ended up on the cutting room floor. They were saving you for I want to say a bigger part, but maybe that's not the appropriate way to put it. I don't know. So just to summarize this, Keith, I don't mean it in a bad way. You are, after all, the man who runs this TV Okay. Are you saying that you were a porn star?
Well, let's put it this way. It was porn that with an X rating could be shown on the local cinemas. But I suppose, yes, because I believe that they were very kind, and that those of us who were extras only had our backsides filmed, which was just as well.
Keith, my
I
bacon and eggs are coming up. I'm feeling a bit queasy now. Well, that's extraordinary. Phil, have you ever considered being a porn star?
You know full well why I could never become a porn star.
Well, I was thinking you could have, you'd have a minor role of some kind, you know.
Yeah, very minor. Mind you, you were in Deep Throat, weren't you?
I've certainly, I'm not sure it was ever filmed, but I did the early takes on that, certainly. Yeah. But Keith, sorry, and the only reason I'm saying that we can, because Napoleon will not live to fight another day, but we need to do him justice. But this is a remarkable revelation that the man whom all of Lewis respects.
That's a broad statement.
Well, it adds to your James Hunt style character. You've got the red speeding vehicle, and now you've confessed, and what you have to accept was pretty grilling cross-examination by Phil and me. Then that you
I haven't got a word in edgeways yet.
No, go on. You'll have your word. But you are in fact James.
I don't know why I'm bothering really this morning.
No, but he is James Hunt.
I get that analogy.
Yeah, big red car, loads of pretty women around him.
He's got a red devil.
Yeah,
it's got a sports mode, and he likes his hats.
It all fits, doesn't it? Suddenly.
Whether James Hunt was a porn star is another question.
Yeah, physique for it, hasn't he?
I mean, how many more boxes can this Keith Hayes man tick, Richard?
I troubled.
I mean, this is truly a voyage of discovery, isn't it, for us and the public?
Well, the mercy is that, as you know, Phil, when offenders are interviewed under caution, of course we haven't cautioned him. It's for serious offences, not just audio, but visually recorded. So we have that with Keith. So if necessary, we can use it. Keith, you do not have to say anything, but anything you do say, which you fail to mention until you get to court, may be used against you, blah, 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 blah.
He'll still say it.
I find it extraordinary, Keith. Not that it's you, but that you agreed to do it. Show off your backside.
Like your children coming home to empty the fridge, I was 8,000 miles away from my family, so I showed my backside so that I could fill my fridge.
Yeah.
Not with my backside, I must say.
Phil, I think you've got a backside story, haven't you? I'm not sure whether we've heard it before, but it's worth a retelling.
Oh my goodness. God.
Go on, give it to us, because it's a great story.
And it is, I assure you, completely true.
Don't doubt you.
I was a lodger in a flat above Finchley Road tube station, Keith. And the people I lodged with, who I increasingly did not get on with, had gone away for the weekend. Now, my bedroom overlooked the yard and some of the platforms of the tube station. And I had had a bath and I was drying off in a then very 70s short. Because believe it or not, because I played a lot of sports, I used to have a reasonable physique. And so I was wearing this frankly very short, flimsy, sky blue dressing gown, like a toweling dressing gown. And I was convinced I heard somebody knocking at the door of the flat in the communal lobby. So I went out of the door, which is a very, very heavy oak door. And as I looked down the stairs thinking I was seeing somebody, the door clicked shut behind me. So there I was outside an entirely empty flat, dressed only, literally only, in a flannelette dressing gown above a tube station. I knew nobody else in the rest of the block, not that they could have helped anyway, because they would not have had a key. So all I could do was go down to the tube station. So I went down the lobby, down the stairs, out onto the main Canfield Gardens, it was called Canfield House. And this is opposite the then flagship Waitrose store. Okay, that was literally across the road from me. Turned left into the tube station where there was a queue of people in the old-fashioned ways at the ticket office buying tickets. So I joined the queue. What amazed me, and still does, is that nobody batted an eyelid. To them, I was just another nutter. Anyway, my turn came in the queue. To the relief of the ticket man, all he could see was my shoulders and above. And I said, I've locked myself out of my flat above your station. My bedroom window, I think, is open, and it's above your yard. Do you have a station manager with a ladder? And they did have a station manager with a ladder. And out came this huge Afro-Caribbean bloke who absolutely wet himself. It had made his year, not his day. Anyway, he escorted me to the yard, got this ladder out, but the ladder didn't quite reach. So we had a subroof outside the flat, but to get to my bedroom window, how I did it, the thought of doing it today is so scary that I managed somehow to use a ledge, and I got to the open window, thank God it was open, and I hoisted myself in. Unfortunately, the old-fashioned windows have that sort of nipple, for want of a better word, that you put the handle on.
Yeah.
Well, the belt of my dressing gown got caught on the nipple, and I was stuck. I was stuck like somebody hanging off a clothesline like that. And then I felt the draft behind me. And the combination of the wind and the movements of the trains off the platforms had lifted my dressing gown, and I was therefore showing at least my arse to the world. I finally managed to drag myself up off the piece of metal and literally fall into my bedroom. I got up, went to thank the manager, who was physically on his knees, shaking like a jelly. Shaking like a jelly. He was inconsolable. And then I looked in the distance, and platforms 3 and 4 of the Finchley Road tube station were giving me a round of applause. Every bit of that is true.
Well, Phil, you say that. I've seen your police national computer record. As I understand, the what was then called the Metropolitan Stipendiary Magistrate who tried you rejected that account and thought that you were just flashing your ass. Which,
Well,
and,
whatever the motive, it certainly got flashed.
it got flashed, and we have, I know, in previous broadcasts talked about bad character evidence, and I'm aware that on a number of occasions that has been wheeled out in relation to you as being an example of where you are a serial bum flasher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's no point flashing my front bits, as you know. So I rely on my.
I don't know. I'm just slightly concerned that I find myself talking to two men, both of whom seem to quite enjoy revealing their rear ends. Not, I'm just trying. I don't think I've ever done that. Not without.
Mine is merely a memory. It wasn't. Today. It'll have gone viral on the mobile phones, but not then. They didn't exist. I didn't see anybody with a camera.
Did they do an ID parade where they could recognise your dimples and say, "Yeah, that's definitely the one."
Can you imagine that a lineup of backsides? Good.
A lineup of back, and then you've got.
But as Keith has pointed out, he didn't remain in the film. He was on the cutting room floor, so he's clearly a very unattractive arse.
Well, I wouldn't. It may, as I said, it may well be that his rear end is simply, or was simply, too pert, and the main actors in the film insisted that he was removed from it because he would steal their limelight with his buttocks. You see that?
Now, Richard, you are actually you've been hard on, if I may use that phrase, you've been hard on Keith and me.
Yeah.
You are showing a very unhealthy interest, if I may say so, in naked men's backsides.
It's
you seem fascinated by the topic.
The way I see it.
Well, that's the point. It is the way you see it.
Yeah, as a child, I love to go to the churchyard and do brass rubbings, and that's sort of just turned into arse rubbings in the fullness of time. So, these things do.
Well, of course, you and Jed still go to a churchyard, don't you?
Oh, yeah, Keith knows that St Anne's Churchyard is in fact a little haven of wildlife, which is a joy for all of us. I don't know if you ever go there, Keith. Maybe not.
Just occasionally, I do have the need to go to St Anne's once in a while.
Yeah, they've now got the slope up on the western end of it, so you can get in there.
Can you hear the noise behind Keith? That's Declan and Ada.
Yeah.
Yes.
Laughing their heads off, having heard what Keith has got up to.
Yes, and my back's to them.
Yeah.
Keith, I think you're booked for Saturday night. You and Phil. The Fat Monty, they're going to call it. I think it's like the Full Monty, but
and I think you've made nice noises about the Full Monty, saying it's a movie that you enjoyed.
Yeah. It's homemade in the sense that it's from this country, B, it had some great actors in it. C, it had a great script. And D, it keeps the women happy because they are hoping to get a glimpse of the men's buttocks.
I was discussing this many years ago at Reuters with an American colleague, and he was saying just how very popular the movie was. And I said, well, the accents and so on. And apparently they put strap lines along because they were afraid that American audiences wouldn't understand a word of what was being said.
I'm sure of that. Yeah, subtitles are there. It's like the Alan Bennett play that got turned into a film, which in this country was called The Madness of George III. And when it got released in America, they changed the name of it to The Madness of King George, because they were concerned that Americans would say, gee, we don't need to go and watch that. I've not seen the first two anyway. And that is apparently a true story. Alan Bennett tells it beautifully, of course.
Well, last week at the Bradford Town Hall, was a performance of The Barber of Seville, sung purely in Yorkshire dialect.
Good grief.
True.
There is that. I'm trying to think what they're called. There's a company who put on Shakespeare's plays in the Yorkshire. I'm not sure it's quite dialect, but Yorkshire accent, and I'm trying to think what they're called. But it's the same idea.
Well, my friend who lives in France, he and I have a mutual friend who's as Yorkshire as they come.
Yeah.
And we were pulling his leg, and my friend Pat in France just said, opening, "That needs a haircut, lad." The end. Anyway, you don't get that. It's all right.
No, I know. Got it. Phil, you were talking, or you mentioned to me earlier this week about an episode of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue on Radio 4.
Yes, I did.
And one of the rounds they have on that is one of the teams of two are given a book or a film or whatever it might be that they have to describe to the other team have to guess what it is. So it's a sort of vaguely comedy.
Well, there's that, but if you're meaning what I alerted you to, it's the meaning of a word.
Yes, go and tell us about it.
Intern.
Yes.
And the answer was where a Yorkshireman puts his ashes.
Intern. Yeah.
And I didn't text that to Keith, actually. I think he knows that one.
Yeah, and the other one that I thought was rather good from the episode this week was the two of them doing Yorkshire accents, saying, and one of them comes in and says, "Hey up, I'd love a cuppa." The other one said, "Right, well, you sit down and I'll see what I can do." And the first one says, "Aye, that's grand, that is. It's a film. E.T.
Yeah.
E.T.
E.T.
Very, very, very clever plays. Very clever plays on words in that program.
Well, my friend Andrew, who has lived in Yorkshire all of his career, as well as being brought up in Sheffield. It's a bit like Hale and Pace, Geoffrey Boycott, The Yorkshireman, all those fantastic sketches. He does say "e" a lot.
Yeah,
that's his. He just does it. I've never heard him say "a up," but my neighbours here are both proper Lancastrians. Well, they're from Widnes, which was in Lancashire when they were born and brought up there.
right.
And Jim hasn't lost any of his northernness at all. And he says things like "oh I" and "ale," and very funny.
The old fellow who was my the tutor at college where I taught for a while, significantly older than me. I would imagine he's gone now, but the Queen's College, Oxford, is just full of bloody Northerners. And he did literally used to say, "he," and it, you know, if it was a sort of interjection at the start of every sentence that he'd say "he."
Yeah.
And I remember.
Like, yeah.
Sorry.
It's almost like what was it? Not a pronoun.
Well, it's a verbal tick, isn't it?
It is. It is, and a totally unrelated story that you might find funny. I have mentioned in the past that at Durham, where I studied law, my equity tutor was called Leo Blair, who was Tony Blair's father.
Father, of course, yes.
I had no idea about that at the time. It's only since that I discovered this. But Leo Blair QC had a stroke, sadly, and he'd had to stop practicing. So he got this job at Durham Uni, the law department, as a lecturer and a tutor. And in my particular tutorial group, and he was whether it's because of the stroke or it was always the way, he was a hilarious malaprop, both in his lectures and in his tutorials. And we had a girl in my tutorial group whose name was Angela Maxwell, and he could never get her name right, ever. So we had Wax Mel. The funniest one was Smelly Wax. I mean, this is in this sort of very gentle, I think, Edinburgh accent.
Yeah, because they were. Tony Blair went to
Fetters.
Fetters, yeah, in Edinburgh.
He went to, I had, because it turned out two of my friends at Durham, who also went to Fetters, knew the family. Again, that's posthumous, but
well, that's why Tony Blair has such a broad Scottish accent, obviously. No.
Oh, that explains it.
Yeah. No, dear old John.
He then became MP for Sedgefield, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah. Dear old John, who was my fellow tutor, very much significantly older than me. I imagine he's no longer of this parish. I recall saying to him the first year that I started tutoring there. And after that first year, I would go and do the interviews because he hated students. He wanted to get on with his archives. He didn't want to teach people. And I said to him, I said, we've got this student who you chose last year, who just doesn't seem to be quite capable. Just out of interest, why did you choose him? And he said, well, this, and I'm saying what he said. I'm not saying it with any approval at all. He said, I was in my room, and this chinky came in, and he had a Glaswegian accent. And I thought, well, there's a rarity. We'll have one of those, won't we?
I mean, it is true. I mean, I'm so bored sometimes. I watch old episodes of The Comedians and stuff like that.
Oh, right, yeah.
And you've got Charlie Williams.
Yes.
You know, the original Yorkshire black guy with a broad,
at least mixed race, certainly, yeah.
Ooh, yeah, maybe. Don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty confident he was mixed race because I used to go and do some work in Lincoln, and right up by Lincoln Cathedral, so the top end of town, the nice bit of town there was a butcher's shop that sold fantastic pies. And the bloke in there, I was just convinced was Charlie, because he looked like him and he sounded like him. And I'd always go in and buy a few pies and bring them home when I was there. And I was sort of in my mid-20s. I never plucked up the courage to say, are you related in any way? Because it was a dead spit in terms of the look.
Well, it reminded me of his, I thought, superb comic ability to take any sting out of colour.
Yes.
As an issue.
Yep.
Because he'd meet it head on. So
yes.
There's one, they did a big charity bash for the blind, actually, that I watched recently that had all of them on, including that gobshite Bernard Manning, but there we go.
Yeah.
And Charlie comes on and said, you may have noticed what I can't do the Yorkshire accent well at all, but you may have noticed how I look, what I look like. Well, I'm here to add a dash of colour to the proceedings. So he met it head on.
Yes.
Straight away.
Yes.
And there were some very good jokes, and they were generally quite clean. Really.
Yeah.
It was only Manning.
The comedians, that program generally was clean. Some of it was a bit hackneyed. It was a bit.
Another coloured comedian that I liked, and I had the privilege of interviewing because I thought that he handled the colour question extremely well, was Kenny Lynch.
Yeah.
Yes. Very much so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. I have, and I'm sure Phil won't approve of this.
I don't approve of anything you do.
No, but since his passing, I have been re-watching Barry Humphries. And as an extemporizer, which is, Phil, to a certain extent, what you and I do in our professional life, and to a certain extent what Keith did in his professional life, what we probably do here. He was just extraordinarily good. There's an episode of Parkinson when he's got Judi Dench and that woman who's married to the ludicrously fat rock star. I can't remember what her name is. Sharon Osbourne. And it's just brilliant. And it's not, it's not scripted. He's talking away. Parkinson.
What, as Barry Humphries or in character?
No, in character as Edna Everage.
Yeah, I never got Edna. I got Les Patterson big time.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah. No. Edna is by far in that particular interview. Michael Parkinson asked him about his children, and Edna says, "Well, my daughter is a serial shoplifter, and she goes around shoplifting at Wakefield all the time, and she's been wanded down in the back room many times by this burly security guard, and then she gives the name of the security guard, which is a woman, and she said, minute she's wanding her down, the next minute they're in IKEA buying furniture." And then Parkinson says, what about your son? And she says, yeah, she made a dress for me. He's so skillful. And she said, do you know my son? He's a practicing homeopath. He came into my bedroom one evening. I'd had a couple of Valium and an Ovaltine. I think that's what he said. he'd come back from a Stephen Sondheim, and he said, "Mum, I'm a practicing homeopath, and as is my roommate." And it goes on to say, lovely roommate, Judy Dench. You'd love to meet him. He comes from Boston. He was a choir boy, you know, and he toyed. he toyed with the priesthood when he was younger. It's just. There's nothing rude about that, but it's just beautiful wordplay, I think. So
it's carry on. It's slapstick, isn't it? It's carry on.
Well, it's slightly more subtle than that. And towards the end of this interview, Parkinson says, "Well, thank you for coming along and answering my questions." And Barry Humphries said, just completely off the cuff, he said, "Well, what would have been the point of me coming along and not answering your questions? Let's be fair, Michael."
Can you buy that online?
Yeah. Give it another try, Phil. I know you have your reservations, but
I may do that. At the moment, I'm struggling genuinely with an extremely decreasing battery, so I may just conk out. But we have done nearly an hour.
We've done nearly an hour. I don't think we've mentioned our main man yet, who we leave, and it's probably appropriate because it took him some time. We leave him tramping back from Russia with the remnants of his army, and we can pick up his story maybe on Friday, perhaps, if that's okay, Phil.
Well, I've agreed to do it for a number of episodes now, but you keep extemporizing.
Well, I'm sorry about that, but I like having a chat with the pair of you. I know that sounds a bit weird.
You and your chats. Yeah. Anyway,
we cover a lot of interesting ground.
It's interesting to hear buttock stories, but I think we've probably had enough of those.
Would you like me to put a bin bag on your scooter? Because the seat's getting
wet.
that'd
be very kind.
No, he doesn't need it because, in fact, he's going to take.
He'll get
No. He's going to take his trousers off anyway because he's been telling us about how he's been showing his bum.
Could I just make an observation, which changes the course of the conversation slightly? But in the paper this morning, there is in one of the papers anyway. In several papers, there is a big story about a job's worth somewhere up near Blackpool, who has been threatening and bullying for 2 years an old lady of 90-something for giving birds bread and so on. But the reason that it's made the news is because they have been threatening this old lady of 90 with all sorts of things. And if you recall, as Ada asked for your help and advice the other morning, because she was also bullied by a local council official. And it seems to me that this is endemic throughout local council officials.
It's small people with limited powers that they like to exercise.
That's enough about you, Richard.
Shut up. No, but that is appalling.
Yes, it is.
You know, I don't particularly like pigeons, I have to say. Maybe with a blueberry sauce, perhaps, something like that.
Yeah. It doesn't matter about the right or the wrong of the.
No, exactly. You know,
and they are treated. Yeah.
Yeah, I like living where I do because there's that what used to be the police garage behind my house. It's got a flat roof, and so it just gets seagulls on it, and they, if anything, are worse. I may have told you this story. Sorry, I know we've got to go. Some
No, I
years
don't
ago.
have to go. It's just when it conks out. That's all.
Yeah. Some years ago, when my youngest daughter was probably only just into double figures by way of age, it was a very odd thing because we get seagulls, and I've told you this, Phil, before. We get seagulls, and we also get rooks, and the rooks tend to be down in the middle of town by the station, those big trees there. Seagulls at the top of the town, but occasionally they meet up and have these sort of terrible Battle of Britain type combats. And I was in my first floor lavatory. I'm not going to tell you any more than that. I'm not going to mention my bottom. I was actually having I couldn't afford a seat. I had a standing event, and I just saw this thing flash past the window, just outside, and then I heard a crash, and it was a rook that had been chased off the roof of the police station by a seagull, and it clearly got a bit discombobulated, and it ended up just going straight through my daughter's bedroom window, and landed on top of her on her bed, which was hideous. And you could imagine it was a trauma for her. And I was thinking, oh God, what am I going to do with this? You know, have I got a dead rook? And how do you cook rook? I don't know. But I got a towel and I picked it up and held it to the window, and off it flew. But you know, there is an interesting little thing in Lewis. The conflicts between the seagulls and the rooks, they really do deeply hate each other. So it's you know, Lewis FC are called the Rooks, Brighton and Hove Albion are called the Seagulls. You can see where the conflict comes from.
Yeah, they should have a match each year.
Yeah,
the Rooks versus the Seagulls.
No, but in all seriousness, Keith, I've stood and watched 50 of each bird variety just down the way, round the back of the Black Horse, in fact, swooping around at each other, and clearly intent on causing each other harm. That you know, none of them are very nice, I'm afraid. I'm not sure I like birds, but there we go.
Well, I watched some old cricket footage from the mid-70s the other day.
Yep.
And it was a match at Perth, England and Australia. The programme was about how brutally fast Jeff Thompson was.
Yeah.
But one part of the programme was Tony Gregg hit a ball that was relatively catchable, but it went over the head of Dennis Lilly and hit a pigeon that was on the field, on the outfield. And the pigeon, everybody thought was dead. The ball had absolutely smashed it. Well, Dennis Lilly, fearsome in his own right, goes to the pigeon, lifts it up, takes it to the boundary very carefully, starts stroking it, puts it back on the ground beyond the boundary, gets on with the game. 2 minutes later, the commentator says, the pigeon's just flown away.
Dear, oh dear.
I think it was Richie Bennout saying the pigeon's off. You know,
well, you know, it's good to hear that even dear old Dennis, with his hairy chest and his medallion, had a softer side with the birds. Anyway, I'm away.
With the fairies. Yeah. Bye.
Goodbye.
Go to your churchyard and speak to the fairies.
Thank you. I will see you on Friday.
All right. I will remember you both tomorrow when I go into a new era, a new part of my life.
What part is that, Keith, if I may ask?
I become a mid-octogenarian tomorrow.
Oh, right. Is it your birthday tomorrow?
It is indeed.
Oh,
Yes.
Keith. Who have you got appearing on the programme tomorrow?
Well, we don't actually broadcast live tomorrow, so it'll be you again. It'll be a repeat of today.
Okay, all right. Well, if I don't get the chance to see you, I hope you have a good birthday, and I hope we get the chance later in the week to celebrate you being 35.
Well, it's nice. Reaching 35 is indeed, one of those moments in one's life.
Yeah. But I do hope that you have a nice restful day.
Well, I shall try very hard. Knowing this business, I doubt it. Incidentally, Ada just put on the table there the menu from Sunday lunch, and I sampled Sunday lunch yesterday, and it's as good as ever. So
good.
if you want Sunday lunch, tell everybody the Black Horse is the place to go.
The one thing I have said to Dec is that at the moment they don't have a homemade soup, and at lunchtime I often don't.
Yes.
I don't want a full meal, but I want a nice bit of crusty bread and some homemade soup, please.
I think I heard you saying that to Declan the other day, and I think he's taken that on board.
Yeah, it's a request. That's all it is. But I do like a bowl of soup, and I simply won't. I'm a bit fussy. I won't eat soup out of a tin.
No, quite right.
And it's
can I just tell you one little story? Sorry, it was gone, but when I first went to Belfast, I was introduced to a pub, and it had got an English name, it's sort of like the King Edward or something. I can't remember exactly, but you would go in, and behind the bar was a barman who would shuffle up and say, "Yeah," and nothing more. And then he would offer you one of 57 varieties of soup. And do you know who that barman was?
Go on then.
Jerry Adams.
Oh my giddy aunt. There's a lovely shop in Liston Varna, which is the in County Clare. It's effectively the centre of Irish folk music, if not folk music generally. And I was travelling around Ireland, and I saw this shop, which was a tailor's shop, small village. I thought, why? How do they keep a tailor's shop going? And I went in and had a look around, and the bloke said, "You'll be wanting a pint of Guinness." And I said, "Well, yeah, that's nice." And then he just took me through a doorway, and it was a tailor's with a small bar adjacent to it, and that's how he kept the business running. was selling his
yes. It's a feature of quite a number of Irish bars that they would have a little shop where you can buy sort of a carrot and a cabbage and a pound of tea and so on and so forth. And then you walk through to the back, which is the pub, and it's rather pleasant, actually, rather nice.
No, it's it's you sometimes walk into bars on the west coast of Ireland with a degree of trepidation if you've got an English accent, but I confess I've never had any difficulties there, and I've had some great conversations with the locals, who of course are always willing to talk.
Absolutely,
and even occasionally listen. but not quite. Keith, I'm away.
Okay, good to see you on Friday if I don't see you before.
Lovely. You're a good man.
Okay, take care. Well, there you are, the two Bs, and we actually actually had a chat about a lot of things. We often set out to talk serious and then talk nonsense, rubbish, but it's all very good one way or the other, and I'm glad that we do. Anyway, we shall be back with the news and a little look at that in a minute or two. And I'm happy to say that it's Monday and we've got through the first hour without cocking up too much. All right, just for the moment, until another 5 minutes or so. This is Keith Hayes with Mirador Television, full of rubbish and nonsense on a Monday. But nonetheless, I think full of rubbish and nonsense, which turns some people on. Twiddle pip. Oops. From Lewis.